So, an athlete who maybe wants to be more motivated. Lots of reasons why athletes might feel the need to be more motivated, and that might look different for every athlete. But if an athlete feels like they need more motivation, what would you say to them?
My favorite question when it comes to motivation is asking an athlete, what is your why? And that is I don't want to say a loaded question, but it oftentimes stumps a lot of athletes because they're like, well, to win. Or, it's very, not that there's a wrong answer, but oftentimes very broad answers. And they're kind of unsure, especially if an athlete is working through some challenges or having a blocked skill. Um, and it really boils down to an athlete being able to find what drives them. Drive, motivation, terms can be interchangeable. Um, but with motivation, athletes feel like it's something that, or some athletes feel like it's something that you either have motivation or that you don't. And from the sports psychology standpoint, there are so many sources of motivation. So it's not about having, what's the word I'm looking for? It's knowing when you need to rely on a certain source more so than others. So I won't get too in the weeds, but like for me, when I was competing, especially during the summer, I loved summer so much just because it was more relaxed. There wasn't as much pressure. You were working on new skills. Yes, we were conditioning a lot more, which wasn't so fun. But oftentimes our coaches would like, okay, do 20 minutes of conditioning and then I will um, let you have like a 10-minute longer like lunch or 10-minute longer break or just something of that sort. And at the time, I was like, okay, I'm sure I will definitely condition for 20 minutes and get a longer break. But little did I know, like that's a way to motivate athletes to get their conditioning done. They get to go on break immediately. So you're getting something out of it. So like a reward, maybe there's a punishment on the table. Um, if you don't condition, then you'll have to do an additional 10 minutes of conditioning when you get to bars. A fear of getting a punishment, maybe. So, and then all the way on the other side of motivation, because it's a spectrum. So, there, the various sources, it can sway depending on what task you're doing. Um, what we found with, or sports psychology professionals have found with motivation is that the most important isn't the right word. The most impactful source of motivation is when it comes from within. So, is an athlete competing or conditioning or engaging in practice because they love the sport or because they feel like they have to? And so, when an athlete starts to feel like they have to, their motivation can tank. And so, that's where that all or nothing with motivation mentality comes in. And so, it's more so about educating that depending on, again, the task, the skill, it's not an all or nothing. It's just where might that athlete might need to pull from to get the task done for the day? Because I'll be honest, gymnastics was not all rainbows and butterflies. It very, very stressful sport. And it's even more stressful when you're working through challenges that you feel like you might not ever get over. Um, and so knowing and relying on myself as opposed to other people to motivate me. I mean, it's great when coaches and teammates and, um, when you get that motivation or you get encouraging words or feedback or whatever it is. But when an athlete can tap into who they are as a competitor and be able to drive that motivation from themselves, it is so much more fulfilling because an athlete knows what they need. Maybe not initially, but it gets to a point where okay, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. So I think I don't know that it's more motivated is the best way to put it. I think, well, I mean, it's a great question, but I think it's more so just knowing when you need to use certain sources of motivation, and even for parents and coaches as well. Um, learning all about motivation and knowing what works for athletes, maybe what doesn't work for athletes, um, and even helping athletes get to a point where it's, again, coming from within themselves. Because that is when an athlete is truly having fun. And from my experience, from the athletes that I work with, from what they've told me, when they're having fun, whether it's fun cheer or fun gymnastics, they're not thinking about their blocked skills or the pressure or the expectations. They're just doing it. And I've found that when an athlete is just doing their sport without even trying, they're motivated, they're confident, they're executing their skills and they're executing their routines. Um, so it's very much a lot of education, and it doesn't have to be super formal in the sense of, opening a textbook and learning all about it. It's more so just having conversations with athletes and, when you're having fun, when you're doing your best, like, what do you find to be motivating? Like, what gets you to go? And having those open-ended conversations, and really just getting to know not only the athlete for themselves, but also as mental coaches, as coaches in the gym. This way, everyone's on the same page. We can learn what works for athletes to boost their motivation, which in turn will boost their confidence. So it's really full circle with that one. Motivation is super, super important.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much that we could dig into and unpack with like everything you shared. Like there's so much that goes into this. But from just what you shared today, my takeaways personally are if you're an athlete watching this, it's understanding what is your why? Why do you do what you do? Because at the end of the day, it's probably not to win or to just because, all my friends are doing it. Like there's a reason why you're here. And it used to be fun. You like the thrill of learning new skills, or maybe you do love competing at the end of the day. And it's even that much sweeter when you get that trophy or that championship, right? Like it feels that much better. It feels like, all your hard work truly, truly, truly pays off in that moment. But there's so much good stuff, but it's figuring out your why. And I think as a coach or a parent trying to motivate an athlete, that external stuff, it works. But a lot of parents and coaches, they've tried it and
Right.
it's not lasting a lot of the times. That's because that intrinsic motivation, it's not the most impactful thing for them. So I would say there's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but before you lean on that as your go-to, learn how to ask really great questions. Like if you
Right.
ask an athlete a really good question, like going into practice, asking them like, what are you excited about for today? And don't even make it about practice because sometimes, especially for an athlete that's struggling, that feels like more pressure. Like could you say, what are you going to do at practice or what are you going to work on? They hear, are you going to do your tumbling? Right. So it's
Right.
a little tricky,
Exactly.
but asking how are you going to have fun today? What are you looking forward to about today? That can get their brain working and they can solve that question for themselves. And it plants a seed of today's going to be fun because. So they
Right.
have like their own little goal that they're working towards, which can kind of reignite that spark. Like their brain, instead of thinking about, well, I'm going to go in, I'm going to work on the skill. It's not going to happen because it doesn't normally, like they've got this pattern of thinking. It's, oh, today's going to be like, why is today going to be fun? Like, what would it
Right.
look like? And they start visualizing a fun practice and they walk in with more energy. Like there's so much good stuff here. I love that. But I think what you shared, it's at least a good starting point to spark that awareness and just pay attention to those moments when you do something that works and how you can recreate that.
For sure.